All right, here we go. Happy day. Hope you're having a happy day. If you're not, well, we're here hopefully to make it better. We're here in this series together. Welcome to the Power of Able channel. I'm AJ McMahon, and you out there, you're valuable, you're worth it. So we're going to explore together part three of our series, Ice Ice Baby, empowering your child to overcome ADHD, using ice as a metaphor that we're going to continue with today. Today, we're really going to focus on part three of this series, which is to melt the ice. And what we're going to focus on are practical, step by step guide to empower your child to overcome the specific challenges that we're working on, or you're working on, right? And in the last video, which you can check out, part one of this series, you'll see two links for part one because my video messed up. So there's part one and then the conclusion, and then part two of the series where we got to talk about how you can get to the point where we pick up with melting the ice. And in the last video, which will focus on strengthening, we looked at a couple of specific questions that could guide this process. And the first question we looked at had to do with what's one way you can strengthen yourself, whether it's mind, in your spirit, in your relationships, in your resolve, in your willingness to quote unquote be the bad guy. We also looked at the second question of what can I do to strengthen, or well, I'm sorry, what's one specific, I can't talk today. What's one specific area I want to strengthen my child in? That's the area of focus where you want to help your child to listen when you tell them to do something, to stop hitting, to do their homework, go to bed, overcome the challenges that they're facing on a daily basis that are manifesting in the day-to-day struggles. Also, what can you do, which was the third question, what can you do, or what can I do, when we're asking ourselves to strengthen myself in the one area that I picked? All these things are important to help you strengthen your resolve so that as we dive into the practical wisdom today, you're ready to create a plan. At the end of the day, we get an opportunity together to help you formulate a plan that's going to empower your process to help your child overcome the challenges and to, as we're talking about in this metaphor, to melt the ice. We have got to do this together. I might bring incredible knowledge and wisdom from working with countless families and empowering them. You know your child, you know the child that you're trying to help and to empower. We've got to work together to create this plan. First thing I want to encourage you to do as we walk through this plan, and we're going to make this very practical today. We're going to really focus on things step by step. First thing I want to ask you to focus on is think first about the questions that you ask yourself. First, we got an opportunity in the last video, and if you haven't had a chance to watch that, please go back and watch the last video, Strengthen. We got an opportunity to help you to look at what's the specific area that you want to help your child melt the ice in. What is the specific way your child may want to be on the ice? And the ice is an area where your child may want to quote unquote stay on the ice because they find that situation to them stimulating. So they want to stay on the ice. They want to stay on the tablet. They want to not go to bed. They want to be engaged in different things that we might look at as sensory issues or other factors, but it really have to do with your child leaning into what is stimulating for them. Also, not wanting to lean into what is not stimulating for them, brushing their teeth, doing their homework, tying their shoes, or other areas. So, what we get to do today is I want you to think about the specific area that you want your child, a specific one. There may be many, but what is a specific area that you want to empower your child in? A lot of times, the first area that people find most effective is empowering their child to listen, to do what they tell them the first time. Because oftentimes, when caregivers are trying to empower their children and they're not even getting their children to listen, then everything else is just a headache and a hassle. To try to be able to implement any kind of discipline or consequences or hold them accountable just falls apart because they won't even listen. It just becomes a power struggle and a battle. So a lot of times that's the start. Some of you want to extrapolate to a different situation. Maybe it's something like bedtime. And this could be other things like what we talked about. It could be your child not wanting to get ready for school in the morning, or uh, having trouble with lashing out or hitting. But we're going to focus on, in this example, the listening aspect and really empowering your child to melt the ice in that way, and a specific thing like a bedtime struggle. Again, your situation may be different, but the principles are the same. So when we talk about melt the ice, first thing I want you to do is think about the one specific challenge you want to empower your child to overcome. What does a vision for melting the ice look like? What is your vision for what you hope for? How do you hope things will be when your child is doing well in the way that you hope? That vision is so powerful. You may need to stop, pause the video. You may need to come back later when you really have time to sit down, because part of creating this plan is really going to be the opportunity for you to really focus some attention. I would encourage you to set aside about an hour and just sit down with this video and go through step by step. What is your vision? Write it down, dream about it, envision it, lock it into your mind, because that's what your child is capable of, and that's likely where hopefully you're going to get to through this work. So keep your vision in mind. That's the first step. Secondly, we want to look at, okay, what is the ice for your child, and why do you think your child wants to stay on it? So be specific. We're going to use the two examples. We'll say the ice is, for some children, they are not listening. They are not following through with what you tell them to do. So that can be the ice. Well, why do you think your child wants to stay on it? How do you think your child not listening or not doing what you tell them the first time might actually be a benefit to them? And I know this can sound kind of crazy, kind of wild, but in actuality, our children are thinking of things in their world on their terms, and they're thinking about how certain things might benefit them. So I want you to think about that. Think about it from your child's perspective. And here's where your wisdom comes in, because you know your child, you know more than you think you know. This is your opportunity to apply that wisdom to empower you. So what do you think your child may be getting out of uh, uh, the struggle, if you will? What do you think might make it make sense for your child to not do what you tell them the first time, or not go to bed when you ask them to, or even to lash out when they are feeling frustrated? Well, part of it, we might bring in some developmental aspects and some developmental understanding, because from a developmental perspective, our children are operating with a developing, not disordered brain. And in brain development, it develops from the back to the front. The prefrontal cortex is the final part to fully develop when we're in around our mid 20s. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for impulse control, mood regulation, and judgment. You know any of your children that are struggling with any of those things? Well, because the other parts of their brain are more dominant, that's more responsible for feelings and impulses. And that doesn't mean they have no control. It just means it's more difficult for them to rein those things in. So sometimes the ice can just be, I am letting my big feelings out, and it kind of feels good for them to let their feelings go. And you maybe can imagine this as an adult. Just imagine you could let your feelings go and sort of kind of get away with it. I mean, that's something that we may be tempted to do, but we don't do because of all the consequences and accountability we have to deal with. But when we're thinking about it from a child's perspective, there could be some developmental factors there. So how do you think it might make sense? How do you think it might benefit for your child to want to stay on the ice in the specific area that you've identified? So you've got your vision. Now you're looking at it from your child's perspective, and you're trying to make sense of it, because this is going to inform what you can do about it. All right. So now when it comes to the plan, you want to find the proactive ways to try to help avoid the challenges that are going to come when you are empowering your child to melt the ice. And also, you're also going to we're going to look at the strategies that you're going to implement in real time. And we're going to call these strategies how do you respond? So we want to look at how do you reduce the reactions or the pushback or the challenges, and then how do you respond effectively? Because imagine that now we're going to just go to a real world scenario. Imagine that it's that crisp day outside. There's actual ice out. Your child has been playing on it. Your child enjoys being on the ice. That kind of scenario, and then you say, "Hey, let's work together to melt this ice, to make this enjoyable situation for you, though risky, though dangerous, though they can have some consequences like falling or skinning your knees or different things. Even though we you may have those consequences. We know that this can be something that you enjoy being on the ice, but we're going to melt this ice. Let's just focus together, you and me, child, on melting this ice. How do you think your child may respond to that if they really enjoy being on the ice? What do you think their reactions might be in these situations? Even if they comply at first, a lot of times children kind of think about it and say, "Hey, I like being on this ice. I mean, I know that this might not be ideal and it might be time to go in or do other things, but for me, I'd rather stay on the ice." So when it comes to your parent, you as a parent or caregiver or professional trying to help the child melt the ice, you can get pushback because they're like, "No, I mean, I know you think melting the ice is beneficial, but I enjoy it." So what do you think are the reactions you get? What happens? I mean, you can get a myriad of reactions, and I know you may be thinking of them out there, right? When you think about these reactions, well, here's the thing: when you're identifying the reactions that your child can have, this is empowering to you, right? Because they can't sneak up on you. A lot of times when we're trying to work with our children to empower them to overcome challenges, it is literally like the game Survivor. We have to outwit, outlast, and outplay. Well, hey, you get to outwit because you know what's coming. You know what your child might do. You know whether they're going to have a tantrum or feign helplessness or blow up or shut down or whatever it might be. You've seen it before, right? So you know what's coming. This can inform your opportunity to think about what specific steps might make sense for me to proactively reduce. And so that's the first R we're going to talk about, to reduce the challenges. And then when they do occur, how do I respond? That's the second R. So we're going to focus on that today. So here's some examples, right? So we're looking at a situation like a parent working with their child on listening, and they say, "Okay, well, when I am going to focus my plan on having my child do what I tell them the first time, I know that I'll tell my child to do something and they just won't do it. They just won't cooperate. So what can I do about that?" Well, a parent can proactively reduce the chance by thinking of things. A parent might say, "You know what? When I have planned ahead of time, this has been helpful. Some of the plans I've had ahead of time are to maybe think specifically about whether this is an area I want to hold my child accountable in or not. So I'm not just going through my day willy nilly, telling them to do all these different things. Pick up your shoes, put away your clothes, go sit down, go eat your dinner, go whatever." Because whenever I tell them to do something and my goal is for them to do what I tell them, that's actually an opportunity for them to obey and strengthen that skill to melt the ice where they may want to do what they want to do. But now I'm really empowering them to do what I tell them. But I've got to realize that every time I tell them to do something, I need them to carry through. So part of the proactive reduction is to, like they say, sort of pick your battles. I'm not going to try to go through the day and tell my child to do all these different things. What are the specific things that I really need to focus on telling my child to do? And also realize that that is a training opportunity. So do I need to tell my child to put on their shoes? Well, okay, yeah, but maybe just for right now. I know I can get them to put on their shoes, but they may not tie them well or really focus on doing that well or putting on the right clothes or different things. Look, we only have so much time in the mornings. I'm going to kind of let those things go for now. But what I will do is strategize that when we get home, and I'm going to set aside some time to make sure I can emphasize what that I expect my child to listen by When we get home, I'm going to think about a specific thing that I need them to do and really focus on that. So I'm going to make sure that my child does their homework. So I'm thinking about it. I'm not worried about their shoes, where they put their clothes, they throw the stuff on the floor, but I am going to focus on, okay, Johnny, it's time to do your homework. You're going to sit here. I'm going to make sure you have what you need, and you're going to do what I tell you, so that you have already planned on how to really focus in on empowering them, therefore holding them accountable when you tell them to do something, because that's what you're encouraging. You're going to do what I tell you. So when you tell them something, you got to make sure you're ready to back that up, to follow through. And if you're not, you got to really be cautious about telling them something, because you're not trying to reinforce this idea that what you say doesn't matter, and get into these battles where you can't really back up what you say, and then your child is just thinking, oh, they don't mean it, and it just kind of undermines everything you're doing. So think about, what are the proactive ways that you can reduce the challenges. When you're talking about bedtime, I've heard parents say, I can proactively reduce the challenges by thinking of, hey, sometimes I need to make sure that we are getting home on time. We're in a routine of when dinner is. We are in a routine of when we're going to have bedtime, and we're going to actually think about two or three specific elements of this routine that we carry through consistently, because although my child doesn't want to go to bed, that really sets up the situation where there's a clear understanding of when bedtime is and leading up to bedtime. So parents can find great proactive reduction in the challenge because of the preparation it takes on the front end. So, what can you do to prepare on the front end to empower your child in that specific area? And if you need some time to think, the main thing I want to encourage you in is that you can think of proactive strategies. You are capable of that. Secondly, how can you respond, right? So, you're going to, on the front end, you're going to look at what you can do to reduce the reactions. On the back end, you're going to say, how do I respond effectively? How do I make sure that I'm not letting my child draw me in emotionally or in a way? So when you tell your child to do something and they don't do it, you're ready with to be able to back that up. You're not going to argue. You're not going to get in a power struggle. If they run around or different things and not doing what you tell them, you're going to already think about, how will I hold them accountable? I'm not going to try to tie them to the seat and make them do the homework, but I am going to hold them accountable. I'm going to connect what's important for their life, the homework, to what's important in their life, their tablet, their ability to go outside. They want to ride their bike, to be able to say, okay, I can't make you do your homework, but until you do what I've told you to do, you're not going to get to do anything else. But if you want dessert, if you want privileges, if you want to watch TV, if you want to go outside, that comes after you do what you need to do. You handle your responsibility. And then, if you handle that pretty well, then you probably get to do what you want. But if you don't, then those may be the consequences. You may not get to enjoy those privileges for the day, because I'm going to hold you accountable to what I've told you to do. I'm not going to let you slide on that. Now, it might be day after day after day of reinforcing that and going through the battles to outwit, outlast, outplay, because your child is likely not going to want to thwart your efforts. I actually said that right, thwart your efforts to melt the ice, right? But you are going to be consistent. You have resolve. You're going to keep in mind your vision for what you hope for, that you've already planned. You've already identified the specific area of where you want to help your child melt the ice. You already have your strategies in place of how you want to reduce the proactively the reactions, but then also how to respond effectively when it comes to something like bedtime. I've heard parents work on, for example, like scaling methods. They have prepared to, okay, we prepared the child for bed. They're going to get in their bed. We're going to make sure that the child doesn't have toys in the bed or a tablet in the bed. We're going to make sure that the child knows that they need to stay in the bed. And that's what they need to do. They don't need to go to sleep. We can't make a child go to sleep, but we can hold them accountable to stay in the bed. That we communicate to our child that if they get out of the bed, then they're going to have consequences, which might mean they go to bed a little earlier the day before. Or for some parents who've chosen it, that's when they're going to reinforce that level of disobedience with a firm and appropriate spanking or something like that, to be able to say, no, we've told you to stay in the bed. We can't make you go to sleep, but you will stay in your bed. You're not going to have toys in the bed. And thinking about the appropriate consequences if your child chooses um, to react in a way. Some parents are like, well, my child is going to throw a tantrum or they're going to cry. Okay, that may be something that you have to be able to put up with, in the sense that you don't go in, you close the door partly, you try to enjoy a show or something that kind of distracts you a little bit from the pain of your child crying while they're in the bed. They're not getting up because they know that if they do, they've got that next level consequence. But they may do some other things, but you're looking at how you can respond to these situations in a way that doesn't suck you in and doesn't create further power struggles. So when you do that, when you have a vision for what melting the ice looks like, when you have identified specifically from your child's perspective how they want to stay on the ice, when you have then been able to plan out, how can I proactively reduce the reactions that I know are coming when we try to melt the ice, and how can I respond effectively to be able to not get sucked in and hold my child accountable, then this is giving you the foundation of an effective plan that you get to carry out for weeks and months. And that's where the perseverance comes in. That's when you are working through the precipitation or the other challenges or the pressures that may want to cause the ice to stay or grow or not melt. But melting the ice is a process that takes time, of your consistency, of your child learning that, hey, this is what we're doing. This whole ice thing, it's a no-go. Anytime I try to stay on the ice, it's not working out for me. And love and effective discipline. So actually, I'm going to actually start to join my parent more in melting the ice, because that's when things are better. They're better relationally. They're better. I get to actually enjoy more of what I like. I'm avoiding these consequences that I don't like, because children 12 and under are developmentally choice and consequence learners. So we're empowering them from their perspective, and you're empowering them from your perspective, and knowing that you are effective in creating this plan. Take the time to do so. It can benefit you and your efforts greatly. And then remember to persevere. You're likely not going to see change or the benefits overnight, and maybe not even for weeks and months, but oftentimes they do come, and they are tangible and life transformative. So hang in there, persevere, stay tuned, stay connected, stay involved as we continue. In the next series, we're going to focus on what to do with children when they are aggressive, when they get to this point where they're trying to push and bully or hit or kick, particularly their caregivers, maybe others. But we're going to focus the next series on that. So stay tuned, stay connected, stay involved. We'll see you next time. I'm going to do this disclaimer. I didn't prepare the medical disclaimer today, but basically the information is provided for informational and educational purposes. Please don't let anything in this video cause you to ignore professional medical advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional for any medical or decisions or emergencies. Stay tuned, stay connected. We'll see you next time.